go.
You really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Hey, motherfucker. What you like to do?
Oh, I don't know. Play chess. Screw.
Well, let's play chess.
They give off to Jonathan Taylor. Jump cutting his way. Close to the goal line. He's in there. Touchdown. I-N-D-Y. Jonathan Taylor.
Wheeler finds Quan from the logo.
Here's Halliburton into the front court. Mishandled it, but gets a shot. Hits it. Hits it.
John, I have never been better to be on the air with you here in Indianapolis, a place where so many of my dreams have come true.
The Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
John gets a day off, which is so well-deserved. Greg Rakestraw is my name, and allow me to do most of the heavy lifting on the show today. Not that I don't want to talk with you. You know the phone lines. It's open now, 317-239-1070 on the Twitter, at Greg Rakestraw. I think you can even email the show to Greg at 1070thefan.com. We've got the guest, and I just ran through them in the crossover segment with Jay Query, and I've got a couple of topics that I want to get to. But it did hit me as I saw on social media just before going on the air that James Vanderbeek, who had been ill, just passed away today at the age of 48. And since Dawson's Creek was like somewhat appointment television for me, like right as I got out of college on the WB and obviously Varsity Blues and playing Mox in that movie, I was a How I Met Your Mother person, and he had a wonderful, somewhat recurring role as Robin Schabotsky's boyfriend from her Canadian days. He was a talented actor, and so ashamed to see him leave us too soon at the age of 48. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Not sure that's going to be a big topic of discussion in the program today, but I just wanted to acknowledge that off the top of the show. In case you just tuned in, I did give you the guest lineup, so let me start with that. And I did do the substitute teacher thing. I go, you know what? There's a handful of things that I want to make sure we discuss on the program, and let's cover them in this order. So Zach Osterman will be joining us at 3:30. Indiana, a couple of days removed from an impressive victory against Oregon. Obviously, we're now approaching about a month removed from winning a national championship in football. And these days now, we find excuses to talk all things Indiana football. Like, for example, I was going through the NFL Draft Combine invite list, which starts on February the 26th here in Indianapolis. And there is very much an Indiana University feel. If time allows, maybe with Zach, I'll go over some of those guys and what their NFL prospects might look like. But primarily the conversation will be about basketball when Zach joins me in the next segment of the show. In the 4 o'clock hour, Kevin Bowen, and how fitting is the timing that I am filling in today. Kevin does his weekly hit on this radio show, and it was announced earlier today that the Notre Dame and Villanova men's and women's basketball teams will be opening up the season in Rome next year. And apparently, the Pope did have something to do with this. I've got some sources at Notre Dame, and I was told that the Pope is not just an innocent bystander in this, maybe playing matchmaker from a basketball standpoint. So clearly that needs to be the next road trip that KB and I go on to check out a Notre Dame basketball game, obviously. So Kevin and I will talk about that, and trust me, lots of other things when he joins us at 4 o'clock. Other than that, now the other things I'll get to are things that I think will be of interest to you, but they are certainly of interest to me, and hence I think I can make them interesting to you. Nick Yeoman will be joining the program, and of note, it is Daytona 500 week. So if you are a racing fan, that is always something you set your calendar to. The IndyCar Series, testing at Sebring the last couple of days. Obviously, you got Trackside that you hear every week on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. The IndyCar season will be here soon enough. But Nick Yeoman has been dabbling in doing some work with PRN around his IndyCar radio schedule for the last several years. It was announced earlier this week that Nick is going to be the new co-anchor of the Performance Racing Network. And for those of you that do not follow NASCAR, which is not as big of a number as it used to be, but still a more sizable number than those, say, outside of Indianapolis that follow the IndyCar series, there basically are two different radio providers. Between the two of them, split every race. For what it's worth, PRN comes and helps out with the IMS radio network for the Brickyard 400. But there's MRN, the Motor Racing Network, and there's PRN, the Performance Racing Network, and that is the group that Nick is going to be working for full time. Now, when he is not doing that, he will do IndyCar races. So he will miss a handful of IndyCar events, but for the most part, he's just going to be busy calling right and left turns, probably about a total of 25 to 26 weeks of the year, which is a pretty good gig if you can get it. So we'll talk some Daytona 500 with him. We'll talk about him, about the career move, etc., coming up at about 4:30. Then in the 5 o'clock hour, I'm going to talk with a couple of friends of mine, both of them about college basketball taking place either locally or just kind of across the state line and not far from us as I point east for those of you watching us on the YouTube page. First of all, UConn is in town tonight to play Butler. And obviously, things have not gone well as of late for Butler. Xavier Robinson's now out for the year. Jalen Jackson obviously has been out since early in non-conference play. The team's fortunes have gone south. Losses to Georgetown and Marquette as of late. And what were flickering to be kind NCAA tournament hopes have pretty much gone poof. And it appears to be another lost season for the Bulldogs. And that a drought of not making the NCAA tournament is going to reach at least 8 years. So frankly, and you can hear that game over on our sister station, 92.7 FM Fuego. Other games can be heard here on The Fan, like their next game against Seton Hall coming up on Sunday night. But not exactly a lot of positive mojo right now around the Butler basketball program. Like even announced earlier today, Butler Blue the fourth will not be there tonight. They're going to start giving him more rest on his schedule. He's be on social media. He won't be at the game. Like, it's really not going well for Butler these days. But it is going well for the young man from Greenfield that will be playing a lot tonight for UConn, and that would be last year's Mr. Basketball and what appears to be a lottery pick in June's NBA draft, one that, well, frankly, we're going to care a lot about in Central Indiana, and that would be Braylon Mullins. Well, if you've heard me calling any of his games at Greenfield Central the last couple of years, or sometimes in conversations on this radio station, you have heard me mention the fact that, well, I've known Braylon's dad since longer than Braylon has been around. I'm old enough to have broadcast not just Braylon's games in high school, but his dad's games in college, because Josh played for us for 2 years at IUPUI. In fact, Josh was on the NCAA tournament team. I'll age the both of us 23 years ago. So I've known Josh for a long time, and I emailed him on Monday. I said, hey, you want to hop on the radio with me so we can brag about your kid? And he said, sure. So Josh will be with us. Josh Mullins, a.k.a. Braylon's dad, will be joining us at about 5 o'clock. We'll talk about tonight's matchup, but frankly, what the experience has been like at UConn, why he picked UConn, and then, hey, is this one and done? Is it on to the league? Obviously, there's money involved going in both directions. My guess would be, and Josh may not want to admit this, and frankly, I get it, but I would tend to think, hey, this is 1 year in stores, and then it's on to the NBA. And frankly, if I'm in that situation, that's what I'd be doing too. So we'll talk to Dad about that coming up during the 5 o'clock hour of the show. And as I alluded to, there are certain things when I know I'm going to be sitting in one of these chairs, like say once every 2 or 3 weeks this time of year, I go, hey, I want to make sure I file that away to have someone on the show the next time I am doing this. The last time that I filled in for John, and I think Jake as well, was the day after the national championship game. So it would have been January the 20th. And believe me, we did not need to have any other guest or any other topic on that show that day. It was the Hoosiers just won the national championship, call the show. And that's pretty much what we did. But at the time, Miami University, they cringe if you say Miami of Ohio, but everybody else kind of refers to them as Miami of Ohio, even though they're like a couple of miles from Indiana. But Miami University is the last unbeaten team in major college basketball. And their top player, kind of like I called a bunch of Josh Mullins games in college, I called a bunch of Pete Suitors games at Carmel, probably 40 of them during his 4-year run with the Carmel Greyhounds, and a couple of state championships involved there as well. Well, Pete has become friends, and literally, I think I was doing the Carmel Pike game a couple of weeks ago. It was a Friday night. They were off, and Pete and his mom were there, come up and said hello while I was broadcasting. I'm like, I'm going to get this young man on the radio at some point in time soon. That day is today. So if you're a Carmel basketball fan, if you're a Miami of Ohio basketball fan, just a college basketball fan, period, Pete Suter will be joining us about 5:25 or 5:30 on the show today. It's why I opened the show by saying, let me do the heavy lifting. We can still interact if you would like to. 317-239-1070, whether that is phone call or text. Tweet to me at Greg Rakestraw if you'd like. But if not, I'll lead the conversation and take it from there. There's obviously a couple of 3 things that I wanted to get to off the top of the show. And both of them were things that happened last night. And I've now been doing this professionally nearly for 30 years. Professionally talking about sports, running sporting events on the radio, doing play-by-play of sporting events on radio or television. My hairline would tell you this. But yeah, I've been doing this now for almost 30 years. And I think I got a pretty good concept and grasp of one of Peyton Manning's favorite lines. One of the movies he loved to quote the most was Bull Durham. Peyton was a big fan of Ebby Calvin Nucleluche. That would be Tim Robbins' character in that movie. But one of the things that he would always talk about would be, winning it's better than losing. I think I have a pretty good concept of that. But I almost felt confused after a pair of wins last night. If you had told me before the game started that Purdue would beat Nebraska in overtime, there was no need for further explanation. And I still think overall, that's the most important thing. But this team seems to have a degree of difficulty built into everything they do these days. Now, again, this is a Nebraska team that is really good. This is a Nebraska team that was more higher ranked than Purdue last night. Nebraska ranked 7th, Purdue ranked 13th. So this is not old Nebraska that why are they in the Big Ten? That's where you go to get wins, et cetera. No. This is a Nebraska team that of this group of 5 or 6 teams in the Big Ten that are really stinking good this year, they're in that group and deserve to be in that group. But when you see a 22-point lead evaporate in the second half and you miss free throw after free throw that could have put that game away, I find myself in an odd place from where I would have been at this time 24 hours ago. And frankly, at about this time 24 hours ago, I was talking about the game with John. And I said, we're going to learn a lot about this basketball team based on what happens tonight. And the positive result happened for that team. And I'm still not sure I know exactly what's going on with this Purdue basketball team. Still not sure. Now, they go to Iowa and play on Saturday. Iowa, good, not as good as Nebraska, but there's still question marks about Purdue. And yes, they won the game. So I'm giving you the double speak. I'm acknowledging my fault right now. Purdue went and got the job done. They won it was their second top 10 win of the season. That's a really good thing for Purdue. And I'm still not sure, and Purdue was seemingly the ultimate sure thing going into the season. But because of the odd circumstance of how that played out, I'm still not sure if I know exactly what Matt Painter has in Purdue. What he did have a team show last night was a lot of toughness. And even if they saw a 22-point lead slip away, even if they were not making the free throws they needed to down the stretch to win the game, they were animals on the glass. And that always translates. That, without doubt, is a good thing. But maybe that game wasn't the litmus test that we thought it was going to be going into it. By the way, I will take a tangent here before I get to the obvious second topic from last night, and that being a Pacers win on the Knicks, and I'm not sure how to respond. It's like Ricky Bobby, I'm not sure what to do with my hands. But the other thing that I would also do is, this reminds me, and obviously this is an election year, and normally that is a much bigger deal down the hall at our friends at 93 WIBC. But I would like to run for the czar of basketball because there's a handful of things that I would change. Now, I actually had another broadcast last night, so I didn't watch a lot of Purdue, Nebraska. I listened to Rob Blackman and Bobby Riddell on my way home, explaining things at the end of regulation and early in overtime. I saw the end of the Pacers game. Since they went into overtime, I got to see more of that Pacers game than I thought I would last night. But I was actually broadcasting IU, Indy, and Milwaukee last night, and unfortunately a 4-point loss for the IU, Indy Jaguars. And I saw something that I'm like, this should be something that we fix. So I'm going to give you just not the whole campaign, but just 3 prongs of me making myself the czar of basketball. One, you familiar with a wedgie in basketball? If the ball on a shot sticks between the rim and the backboard, the end result of that is that it goes to a jump ball. But you know what happens every time, like instinctually, when that happens in a game? The 5 offensive players on the floor start to go the other direction. They respond thinking that's a turnover, right? Because that shot was so hideously bad, I pinned it between the rim and the backboard. I think that should be a turnover. Forget going to the possession arrow. You wedgie a ball between rim and backboard, other team gets possession. That's the way that works. That's part of one step of my campaign. Number 2 would be, and this is going to be the tougher one here, I would think about widening the floor. Now, the reason it's tough, well, we've kind of built these gyms. We kind of want to have courtside seats and get you as close to the action as humanly possible. But without doubt, I see this in every game. There's a turnover because we have pushed the 3-point line so far out to make it a tougher shot, despite the fact that at higher levels, most shoot 35 to 40%. Not most, but a good chunk of players / teams do that. They're like, literally somebody's trying to make a move on a wing, catches a ball and steps on the sideline for a turnover. And they go, wait a minute, why? And it's because you were pushed out because you're 22 feet from the basket behind the 3-point line trying to catch the ball and make a move. I would start to widen floors because the game has become some more athletic. But the other thing that I would do is the czar of basketball, and the reason I bring this up now in conjunction with the Purdue game, and we mostly, likely as Purdue fans that might be listening to this show, I know you IU fans feel differently on the subject, but Purdue won the game in part last night because a dude slipped in front of the Purdue bench. Now, I don't know for sure if it's because, and I guess I could have gone back and replayed the footage of the last Purdue timeout to see if this was the case. But it stuns me, and I see this at a lot of levels of basketball. They're not exactly sitting on lawn chairs or folding chairs or metal benches in a college basketball game. Like, those are like the nicest chairs you could possibly have. My friends at Indiana State are auctioning off padded chairs from their throwback game at like $200 a pop. If you're paying $200 for a chair, it's probably pretty comfortable. But apparently in college basketball, and sometimes in high school basketball, those chairs are not good enough. No. Some manager kid's got to bring out 5 like little mini chairs, and the coach has to be able to talk to his players right in the middle of the freaking floor. Now, I'm pretty sure that if you're playing a high level of basketball, you're probably pretty well conditioned. And so the extra 10 feet to go from the middle of the floor, maybe it's 15, 20 feet, to go from the middle of the floor over to those really nice padded cushion chairs on the bench, you can probably do that. And maybe by doing that, there might be less of a risk of somebody slipping on the floor because sweaty player, drinking water, 90 seconds during a timeout. Maybe there's less of that on the actual floor, and maybe it's on the sideline where you wouldn't make a play in that scenario. Not 100% sure that was the reason why that guy slipped. Might have been a part of it. So anyway, trust me, I'm going to have a website dedicated to this, rakestrawczar.org. It's a nonprofit. I like to profit off being the czar of basketball, but my campaign promises just a couple of three of the things that immediately hit me. So finally, 19 minutes in, let's get to the Indiana Pacers win. And we're supposed to celebrate that, right? I mean, it's the Pacers beating the Knicks in overtime. Was it 137-134 was the final score last night? Big shot after big shot. I mean, my God, it's Pacers-Knicks. This has been put into our brains for the last 35 years. Hey, beating the Knicks is always a good thing. But given the history of these two franchises that seemingly one can't be good without the other, overtime win in the Garden, right? That's a great thing. Except when you're tanking. Except when you've got, 7 or 8 other teams that are kind of doing the exact same thing that you're trying to do. I mean, literally, there are 30 teams in the NBA. That's still the case. Expansion may be coming at some point in time in the near future. Only 10 of them don't make some form of the postseason. And like of the 10, like 8 of those are trying to race to the bottom to get a top pick, the top pick, or at least, and clearly, the Indiana Pacers with the trade for Ivica Zubac have said they line of demarcation. We just want a top 4 pick. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you can have that, Los Angeles Clippers. We just want a guy in the top 4. Now, if we get to 10, so be it. We'll keep it, and we'll give you a future pick as well. So much like the Purdue game, I'm like, I thought I would know how I would respond to this, and I'm not sure I do. The Pacers game, like, yeah, we beat the Knicks. We don't want that, right? Now, the Pacers doing a good job of making sure that doesn't happen again. In case you have not seen the injury report for tonight's game, on the second half of a back-to-back, man, not a lot of dudes are going to be playing in tonight's game, which, frankly, is exactly what it probably should be and needs to be as often as possible going forward. Here is the injury list. James, you're not going to commercial for a while. You can take a break. I got a lot. It's like the phone book, okay? Micah Potter is questionable, left ankle sprain. I saw him hobbling a little bit last night. Jarris Walker, questionable illness. It's going around. He was dealing with that. TJ McConnell is out. Right hamstring soreness. He may have hurt his hamstring getting out of his freshly washed crew car wash, or maybe while he was stopping at an ATM at Indiana Members Credit Union, since TJ has picked up some endorsement deals, and God bless him. Andrew Nemhard is out. Lower back injury management. Aaron Nesmith is out. Well, he carried the team for a good chunk of last. He's got some lower back soreness. Pascal Siakam is out. Left hamstring soreness. My guess is it does not affect him in terms of playing in the All-Star game, but you just want to be safe for the All-Star game, right? Ivica Zubac is out. Left ankle sprain, paternity leave, although he was on the sidelines last night. And then Johnny Furphy, Obi Toppin, Tyrese Halliburton, their names will be on the injury report for the entirety of the season. So in terms of the outs, that's 8, with 2 more being questionable. It may need to look like that for the rest of the season, because the other teams that are trying to be bad are having no shame in being bad. And so I caught myself like, do I applaud? Do I throw something at the television? Like if Cat had dunked the ball when Nesmith fouled him and actually made it, and then Cat hits the free throw, and that's the end of the game, and the Pacers lose, roll credits. That wasn't the worst outcome for the Indiana Pacers. I know that goes within everything, against everything in someone's competitive DNA, and honestly, I don't want the Pacers players feeling that way, but last night may have not been a good result for the Indiana Pacers. Even though they beat their biggest rival in overtime on their home floor. Good job, guys. Don't do that again. So we will talk Pacers if you'd like. Next segment will be me and Zach Osterman. I'm sure there'll be a soccer reference at some point in time, but primarily we'll focus on Indiana basketball. And now, and this is the new world we live in, I'll find ways to bring up Indiana football with Zach as well. Lots of great guests. You can chime in via Twitter at Greg Rakestraw. Hit the text line at 317-239-1070. And there's a YouTube chat room somewhere I might say hi at some point in time. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
Awesome! Totally awesome! All right, Hamilton.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Greg Rakestraw in for JMV. John is back tomorrow on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan. A couple of folks just texted and said, hey, the reason that guy slipped is because a Nebraska fan threw his beer on the final play. Well, that would be a little karmic retribution then, right? I mean, we've been waiting on that one since the brawl at the Palace of Auburn Hills. That building no longer even exists to come back. But I still stand by. There's no need for you to have benches out there. Just use the really nice padded, cushy seats that you've got on the sidelines. Your need to have your huddle on the floor is rather unnecessary. Use the nice chairs that you've got. But thank you for the Purdue fans that qualified that for me. And a little payback there that's the way you slip at the end of the game. 317-239-1070 is the telephone number. Hit me up at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. We are efforting our next guest as we speak. Zach Osterman of the Indianapolis Star, scheduled to be joining us. Indiana got a victory on Monday night against Oregon, and did so, frankly, in easier fashion than Purdue did against that same team on Saturday. Business picks up, though, for the Indiana Hoosiers when they get back to action on Sunday. Game you can hear over on 93 WIBC when they take on Illinois at 1 o'clock. I guess we can talk a little more Pacers if given the opportunity. Because, again, I think everybody is all in on the tank. I mean, nobody sits here and goes, nah, you need to go out and win as many games as possible, and let's see if you can flirt with actually being a playoff team. No, nobody has, that aspiration. And, frankly, the math doesn't check out, all right? The Pacers are 11 games back of the last playoff spot with 28 games left to go in their season. But if you really want to watch whom the Pacers are in the race to the bottom with, there's only one team that has fewer wins in the NBA right now than do the blue and gold. And that would be the Sacramento Kings at 12-43. The Pelicans, who don't own their pick, are 15-40. The Jazz are 17-37. Pacers 14 wins. Wizards 14 wins. The Brooklyn Nets sitting on 15 wins. And to borrow from Marty Brenneman, that is the Titanic struggle that is set for tonight. Coverage begins at 7 here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. As the Pacers and Nets, and does the winner celebrate at the end of that game? I'm not exactly sure. And again, it's this weird thing because you don't want to have that culture of losing set in, all right? That's why you have to manage this if you're the Indiana Pacers, all right? It's why you sit guys out on the last game of a back-to-back. That's what you have to deal with. Because you want the guys out there playing, competing. You want them playing in the fashion in which they did last night. It's why Pascal Siakam is an all-star for a dreadful basketball team, as the Pacers have been because of injuries this year. So you don't want losing to be okay, even if you and I both know the best thing that this team can do is drop as many games as possible to give you as much of a chance for ping pong balls as you possibly can. Which is why there's going to be more players on the Indiana Pacers in street clothes than there will be actually playing in the game tonight. I rattled off how many guys are going to be out, 8. And how many players are going to be questionable, 2. So maybe what would be quicker would be to say, these are the guys that will actually be playing in tonight's game. I saw Talon Peter in street clothes last night. Maybe he plays tonight. Jarris Walker with illness, we don't know. Cam Jones should be out there. Kobe Brown just got him, should be out there. Quentin Jackson has been taking advantage of his opportunity to actually get minutes. He has been playing. Jay Huff will actually be out there. Ben Shepherd, I think so. Ethan Thompson. That's it. As I literally scroll up and down the Pacers roster page at NBA.com, there are 17 guys that are listed in uniform. There's a chance that 10 of them are not playing in this evening's game. When the Pacers and Jazz played each other, like right after the trade deadline, so it was not that long ago, you know, the Pacers have the co-PA announcers. I happen to be friends with one of them. Sean Sullivan is a good friend of mine. And I texted him. I said, hey, are you on the game tonight? It's like, no. I said, well, if you were, it might have been like one of the easiest games you ever. There were like a total of, I think, like 17 dudes that were actually in uniform for that game. I think it was 9 versus 8. Such is what you're going to deal with over the course of the next 2 months of the season. It is temporary pain for long-term glory. Trying to be as bad as you can. And again, now given the unique circumstances of that Pacers trade, to put all of your ping pong balls in one basket to get a top 4 pick. As I'm sure you well know by now, the number 1 pick has never fallen to the Indiana Pacers. And now it seems like it's not just about getting the number 1 guy. It would be nice, but it's about getting a top 4 pick. And obviously, you know, I haven't felt the need to kind of lock in and watch the draft lottery in some time. I will be this time around. But so I may be quoting a format that no longer exists. But like, you know, when they would rattle off the teams, and I guess in this scenario, it would be 14 through 1, and like a certain team gets skipped, you knew, oh, they got a top 3 pick. Like, depending on where the Pacers might be, like you may, like if they get down to 5 and the Pacers have not been referenced, you will hear the cheers from Central Indiana, from wherever they are going to be filming said draft lottery, which I'm sure has been announced and has slipped by me at this point. So the juxtaposition of where this franchise was a year ago to where they are now is strikingly not good. But at the same time, they made, by what all accounts, was a fantastic trade last week to bring in Ivica Zubac that when everybody is whole, you like what this top 7 or 8 can do. Furphy news is terrible, but at the same time, he is a guy that you feel is going to grow into a role. So I feel bad for the kid. It doesn't help the team long-term, as he's probably now not going to see the court until probably next December or next January. But you could argue in the short term, may help this team do what they need to do, and that's lose as often as possible between now and mid-April. Because as I rattled off those teams from a standings standpoint, again, you got a lot of competition. If you just look at teams that have 17 wins or fewer, there are 6 of those. Brooklyn, the Wizards, who, by the way, the Pacers then play next, coming out of the All-Star break next Thursday night. Then it's the Pacers, the Jazz, the Pelicans, and the Kings. And what's unique is that both the Jazz and the Wizards have made trades kind of like the Pacers, where you go, hey, there's actually signs of hope going forward, but those teams are not going to make the mistake of playing those guys a lot the last 2 months of the season. As everybody works their way backwards, but fans in D.C. who have not had a lot to cheer about, like seemingly since the late 70s for that franchise, or the Jazz since the days of Spider Mitchell, but you could argue, even really Back to Stockton and Malone. It's been more bad than good for Utah. And then you've got us, who were playing meaningful basketball games 8 months ago because they were playing meaningful basketball games past Father's Day. The ultimate one-year blip. That's what everybody's hoping for around here. But the next couple of months need to be butt ugly from a result standpoint. And that wasn't what last night was. So it's like, mixed emotions watching that Pacers game last night. Love the fight, love the spirit, love the competitive nature. It's always great to beat the Knicks, right? Right. Now don't do that again. We'll see if we can track down a guest. If not, that means we've got more time for you. 317-239-1070. Kevin Bowen at 4, Nick Yeoman at 4:30. Other great guests in the 5 o'clock hour. Greg Rakestraw, substitute teachering for JMV. The ride continues next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
And you're nothing but a chameleon, lemon-headed, coward, terrorist, and I'm after you, buddy. You're going to pay for it. Good night.
Thank you very much, sir.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
There are sometimes that James plays things on the show that I'm not sure JMV knows what they are. That one, I don't know what that is. You got nothing that's just been in the system since you got here and you just roll with it?
Oh, yeah, that predates me.
There's random audio coming back from a break. Spin the roulette wheel. You never know what you might get. Kevin Bowen in the next segment of the show. Nick Yeoman after that. During the 5 o'clock hour, Josh Mullins, you might know his son Braylon from kicking butt at UConn these days, and Pete Suter from the last unbeaten basketball team in Division I, that being the Red Hawks of Miami of Ohio, unless you went there and you just call it Miami. 317-239-1070 is the telephone number. I talked about Purdue in the opening segment with their win at Nebraska, which, again, was a great thing. Almost backed their way into it to a certain degree, but you really shouldn't apologize about wins in February. You really shouldn't apologize about road wins in the Big Ten. And you really shouldn't apologize about road wins against top 10 teams. But do you feel great about last night if you're a Purdue fan? Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. It's great win. One of the best wins of the season. Doesn't feel great the way that it played out, but certainly you'll take the result. I guess I can talk about some future news about the Boilermakers. And understandably, kind of as the first couple of months of the season were going along and things was kind of rolling, through for the Boilermakers, you go, let's enjoy this now, because you're not going to see a trio stick together like Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Rem. Because by their own lofty bar and high standard, there has been, say, more of an issue over the last 3 to 4 weeks. You haven't done much in the way of kind of future thought or future planning, because you're trying to figure out exactly how this thing can get turned around this year to make sure the final chapter in these guys' great story is a good one and not a case of what might have been. But regardless of what happens at the end of this season, next season is going to look a lot different. There's not just those three that are graduating. You've also got Oscar Clough, one-year transfer in from South Dakota State. And so it will be a rather significant turnover that the Boilermakers have at the end of this season. But apparently one thing that is not changing, and God bless Matt Painter for this, is going out and playing a rugged non-conference schedule. KB and I apparently are going to plan a trip to Rome, so maybe we can't go to this one. But Purdue apparently is going to open the year playing Gonzaga next year. This is from John Rothstein. Of course, you see him all over the Twitter and CBS Sports Network, etc. But he is reporting that Purdue and Gonzaga are going to be a part of a doubleheader at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas on November the 2nd, which would be the opening day of the 26-27 basketball season. First of all, it's tough to say Purdue, Gonzaga, Arizona, and UCLA and realize that two of those teams are in the Big Ten. And secondarily, one of those teams is in the Pac-12, and neither of those teams are Arizona or UCLA. That'll be Gonzaga's first game as a member of the Pac-12. But apparently, that's where Purdue is going to open their season next year. And I realize that most of you, and frankly, I'm probably in this boat as well, I'm more concerned with the next 5 or 6 weeks for the Boilermakers than I am anything else. I'd say the same thing about Indiana University. And because of the transient nature of college basketball these days, you can flip your roster every year. Happens at every level of the game. But in case you're planning ahead, Purdue apparently is going to open their season in Vegas next year. At least that is the report from John Rothstein that I'll make sure I wanted to share with you. Again, you've heard me rattle through what the top topics are, whom our guests are going to be. The pop culture story of the day is sadly the passing of James Vanderbeek. Dies at the age of 48. Had been battling colorectal cancer for the better part of the last year and a half. Not sure that's something to take phone calls or tweets on, but figured I would share that news with you nonetheless. 317-239-1070 is the telephone number. At Greg Rakestraw on the Twitter if you would like to jump on board. Again, Butler and UConn tonight. That is a 7:30 tip-off. Because of the Pacers game being here, you can hear Mark and Nick on that one on Fuego. Again, I have found myself watching UConn and Kansas this year because it's teams who have players who I saw a lot of them in playing high school basketball. Flory Badunga 2 years ago, Braylon Mullins last year. And I find myself almost having, to some degree, a similar experience like 15, 16 years ago. When I first started watching, and the tie is more direct here to Braylon, along with George Hill, a little bit lesser to Flory Badunga. But it reminds me of watching George Hill his rookie year in the NBA. Because I called 100 or so of George's games from a college basketball standpoint from his days at IUPUI. It's like I remember vividly his rookie season, the Spurs playing on a Sunday afternoon, and the Spurs are playing at the Boston Celtics, and George goes in and, like, doesn't throw it down on Garnett, but scores on him. Like, drives right at him and, like, lays it up and around. I'm just laughing at my television because I can't believe, like, my friend is doing this on a national stage. And to a lesser degree, it's how I feel about watching those two kids. I don't realize Flory was in Kokomo for, 3 years before then going off to Kansas. Braylon, obviously born here, grew up here, raised here, etc. But I'm not sure if I'm fully rooting for UConn at this point. But I want to see my buddy's son do well. And so I'm kind of glad I have a night off tonight where I can just kind of kick back, watch the game on television, and see how the kid does. Curious. My guess would be is he's got a significant chunk of tickets for friends and family. You may hear a few more opposing fans than normal inside Hinkle Fieldhouse. And again, the recent struggles of the Butler Bulldogs obviously would go a long way in kind of leading you in that direction as well. We'll talk to his dad, Josh, coming up during the 5 o'clock hour of the show. But from a viewing habit standpoint, that's what I'll be watching tonight. And it makes sense. I mean, Indiana played on Monday. Purdue played on Tuesday. The Butler game gets your attention tonight. Again, you are hardcore if you're watching Pacers Nets. God bless you. And I hope you are listening because Mark Boyle will make it sound wonderful as he always does here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. But it's the Pacers on a back-to-back. And it's the Pacers who we know are sitting 8 and potentially could be sitting 2 more. Again, Potter and Jarris Walker are the 2 players that are questionable. 8 other players are sitting out. And I don't think I need to run through Toppin, Halliburton, Furphy. You know those guys aren't playing. 2 of them aren't playing the rest of the year. And at this point, I'm not sure exactly if you need to see Obi Toppin again this year. But no McConnell, no Nemhard, no Siakam, no Nesmith tonight for the Indiana Pacers. So again, I probably will check in on Pacers and Nets, but in terms of my viewing habits, Butler, UConn, and I'll admit to you, I'm never going to root against the Butler Bulldogs, but I'm watching because of the kid wearing number 24 for UConn in tonight's game. We'll take a quick timeout. Kevin Bowen will join us next. We need to start saving for Rome now. I'll explain if you haven't heard why. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
I don't understand a word you just said.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Zach Osterman has been tracked down. He'll join us coming up a little bit later on in this hour of the program, which means I was going to talk to my intelligent friends for the next hour and a half. I think that's a good way to go. You heard the legal ID guy rattle through all the different letters and throw in a WFNI. I do have to say, and normally John is the lead champion of the AM signal. I did happen to stumble on the Pacers game via AM radio last night. I was actually flipping over to get the Purdue broadcast as I was leaving the IU Indy game, and I go, hey, wait a minute, I can hear the AM. It was like 15 blocks away. But it felt like a bit of home. And about as far away from home as you can get is where apparently the Notre Dame Fighting Irish will begin their next basketball season. Notre Dame and Villanova are playing in Rome, and trying to figure out a way to get there as we speak is Kevin Bowen, who joins us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. You got our tickets yet?
Well, I figure transportation more important than tickets. I think we can start there. So I don't know if you've seen Twitter, but I have tried to contact NetJets.
Yep.
And Lord knows I've sold my body before. I'm willing to do it again. So here we are, NetJets sponsorship. Greg Rakestraw and I are calling.
Are they playing the game at the Roman Coliseum? Have we figured out what the venue is going to be for this just yet?
Yeah, I was like, does the Vatican have a West Gym? I'm unfamiliar with exactly where the arena will be. You know, there was a thought this morning. I was kind of like, wait a minute here. Is the NFL in Italy? I feel like it's like the only country they haven't been in over in Europe at this point. But unfortunately, because I thought, international game, maybe you could kind of tag team it, because from what I understand, Notre Dame Villanova, the first college basketball game of next year's schedule, will be like a 10 a.m. our time tip.
Love it.
Afternoon over there, leading into NFL Sunday that we are used to. But I don't think there is a. I thought maybe a Colts game in Italy, but I don't believe that's possible.
All right. So the international games you're able to travel to with the Colts. What places were you able to go before you started slumming with us on the radio side of things?
Yeah, so just London in 16. They were one of the last teams to go over, period. I think 2007, if that is right, was maybe the first year for the international games, or at least the international series is probably the best way to put it. So 2016, London. Wembley was incredible. Can still picture the Grove where they practiced on that Friday. Can still picture Regent Street and really the Fan Fest. I'm trying to think of the players, Luck and Mathis and McAfee, and they were all up on a stage there. Bjorn Werner was, boots on the ground correspondent over there. And I just remember just how many fans were at the actual Fan Fest on a Friday afternoon for that. And then again, they really had another long break when you think about it, Rake. I mean, they didn't go over until, just 2 years ago to Frankfurt to play the Patriots. So, obviously last year they were back over there, but I would guess they probably have been one of the least international teams so far, and I think they've only given up one home game so far with all of it.
And that was this past year. That was the game that they sacrificed against the Falcons, which, of course, turned out to be the last one of the season, unfortunately, for the Indianapolis Colts. We'll get back to them if time allows. I led the show an hour ago by saying 2 basketball games last night, and I wasn't sure how to react to either one of them. The Pacers conversation was more good or bad because they won last night this morning on your show, Kev.
Yeah, it is. Gosh, what an awkward time to be a Pacer fan. So I mean, just after, being on the top of the mountain, if you will, from a fandom standpoint during last year's run, and now, there's just I think there's a feeling of conflict, frankly, or just awkwardness. Of okay, what should you root for? I do think, given the opponent being the New York Knicks, the disdain is so much there. It's probably the rival, if you will, for the Pacers.
Right.
That I think people are willing to accept. If you're going to have any wins, let it be a team like the Knicks, particularly in that building. Now, tonight, I mean, I get that, it's probably still hard to just outright root for losses for some people, or, outright root for losses. But this is a team, right there with you in the tank standings. So you don't want to be winning this game when you look at it. Your first 2 games back from the All-Star break, starting next week, will be the Wizards in a back-to-back. They're right there, in those standings. So I'll be very curious, what they end up doing. Last night they played all their main guys in the fourth quarter and overtime. Now, tonight they're doing the normal, we're going to sit everybody the second night of a back-to-back, which is kind of what they've done here over the last few weeks with the back-to-backs. But I'll go back to those Wizard games, Rake. I mean, those first 2 games out of the break, next Thursday and Friday, you play Washington. Well, the first night, your first game back from the All-Star break, you've got no excuse for rest or guys.
Travel problems, Kevin. Jet lag, Dramamine, motion sickness, Kevin.
Yeah, you can pull out all those cards there, I guess. But I am interested. Do they adopt for the just, hey, we're gonna flat out sit them, or do you do what Utah has done? For those that haven't seen it, Utah will play their guys, and then they get to the fourth quarter, and they put them on the bench. Is that a route that the Pacers go? So they got 25 to go. I mean, the odds could definitely shift 10, 15%, something along those lines, and we'll see how they react to it.
If I pulled up the schedule, and if time allows, I'll kind of give you the amount of times they can, honestly rest guys from a back-to-back standpoint, where they got to start being more creative, knowing how many games they need to keep losing. But if we're going to go back to, all right, these are the rivalry games, and these are the games we actually want you to win, I've identified 3 of them in order where it's, air quotes, okay to win. The Knicks on the 13th, at the Bucks on the 15th, at the Knicks on the 17th. Those are the 3 games where the competitive juices kick in. Everybody else, we should feel better about a loss. Your thoughts?
Yeah, someone mentioned those 2 teams earlier today, and then they threw Detroit. I don't know if they're done with Detroit, if they still have more with them. But I would
last
agree.
Game of the season. That's the one, Detroit, the last game of the season.
There you go, and they could obviously be resting quite a lot given their playoff positioning there. So, yes, I would say the Knicks and the Bucks, very understandably would top that list. But, yeah, anytime the tank teams show up, the teams around you, Kings, Wizards, Nets, Jazz, those are Pelicans, those are the teams you especially don't want to be beating, because that's the double whammy of you getting a win and them getting another loss. What
do we make of Purdue's win last night?
Well, I thought arguably their best half of the season, certainly one of their best starts.
Sure.
I mean, what Braden Smith and Lawyer did early. And, I understand, Indiana and Purdue have both had one of these games here recently. On the road, you play so great for 35, 38 minutes, then all of a sudden you're, holding on to it like it's, lap 1 of the Indy 500 here and you've never raced before. But, if you look at Purdue last night, the final minute or so, I mean, it's not like they, A, had a slew of turnovers, or B, had just awful possessions. I mean, they got some incredible looks in the final few minutes of that game by guys you want shooting the basketball, not, a late clock heave from Oscar Clough from 30 feet or something like that. And look at the foul line. Braden Smith misses the front end of the 1-on-1. Fletcher Lawyer, splits a pair. C.J. Cox is 85%. He misses both. Again, they got the guys they wanted to at the foul line. So I understand it was beyond nervousness. Cardiologist galore being called in the 765 here on this Wednesday morning. But to me, it's not something where I look at it and think, oh, boy, could that show up again? They got the guys and they got great shots. So, and obviously in overtime they were able to make enough plays there. So, yeah, really impressed by Clough and Trey Kaufman-Renn especially. There's going to be this debate with Purdue the rest of the year into the tournament. What if teams try to go smaller? What if teams try to bring their bigs away from the basket? Okay, that's fine, but, to quote Ivica Zubac in a Zoom call, you've got to punish the mismatches. You've got to punish the smalls. And I thought last night Kaufman-Renn and Clough did that when Nebraska went to those lineups.
Kevin Bowen, I'm not sure that voice needs any introduction on these radio airways, making his weekly appearance on the ride, this time without JMV, with his road trip and buddy Greg Rakestraw here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. When does your attention turn to the NFL Combine?
Yeah, it's definitely starting to more and more. I don't know if you saw the list. I mean, it was announced today. It's just wild to look at 9 guys from Indiana University attending the Combine. And really, in general, now I start to get curious, okay, like, where's the draft depth? And honestly, this year, it's even more vital, Rake, to look into that stuff because the Colts don't pick until, 46 overall, 47 overall. And by all accounts, it actually looks like a decent to better than decent pass rusher draft, which I think is meeting or should meet, where the Colts' focus needs to be. Now, we've seen this team try to draft pass rushers in round 2 and round 3 and it not go very well, but just because you struggle doesn't mean that you stop swinging the bat. You got to continue to get it off your shoulders and try to hit there. So, those are a couple things that interest me. Again, from a local angle, you're always kind of curious those stories. So you got the 9 IU guys. I think you have 6 from Notre Dame, ironically all on offense. You've got a couple former Boilermakers, Dylan Thieneman, the Westfield safety who, ended his career at Oregon. I mean, he is really sounds like day 2, maybe even a day 1 draft pick there. Donovan McCauley, who I know you've called a lot of his games. He ended up at Michigan. He invited to the Combine as well. So just kind of always curious about those types of storylines because, I get that, a good chunk of our listening audience is interested in some of that stuff, along with just, the Colts-centric nature to, I guess, 2 weeks from today, Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard will be meeting the media down there.
Have you guys figured out how many shows and when you are going to be broadcasting from the Combine at this point, or is that still TBD?
Yeah, I think we're at least 3, maybe 4. So okay. I want to say it's 2 weeks from today.
Don't forget your credential, just, from past experience. Please take your credential with you.
Well, who you need to remind in that building.
I know. It's a general reminder for that, having heard that in years gone by. Guys, don't have to worry about the credential of the players. Obviously, Fernando Mendoza is going to hear his name called first, and 99.9% sure that's going to be the Las Vegas Raiders that are taking it. Of that IU group, who's the guy you think that hears his name second?
Boy, Dane Brugler, draft analyst for The Athletic, put out his top 100 yesterday, and he had Omar Cooper Jr. at number 27 overall. And it was interesting. We had Dane on, and I believe we are going to have him on again at the Combine. We had him on back in November during the Colts bye week. And at that point, he kind of talked about Cooper, day 2, which is round 2 and 3. But again, and this was just his board of top prospects, because, wideouts I do think get pushed down a little bit because it's such a, really the cupboard stocked pretty well there with how the college game, passes the football as much as they do. But still, Cooper to be a top 30 guy, that would obviously be a first-round pick. I think he had D'Angelo Pons there, like around 40. Certainly he will be I think he'll be a fascinating debate because, if you just watch him play football, there's little to no argument about him. But, of course, height and weight and all of that, that factors into a lot of these decision makers and their minds there. So, yeah, I think it's probably pretty obvious, early on. Carter Smith came back to IU, their left tackle. I think he could have gone, in that general range. Does Elijah Surratt, is he a round 3 guy? That would probably be next on that list there. So, yeah, I'd say it's definitely Cooper, but then obviously Pons and Surratt could be next up too.
All right, so the Combine is the next thing on the NFL calendar. The thing after that is free agency. The thing that is in between, so to speak, is deciding who of your own players that you don't want to keep. We all assume, and even the player himself assumes that this is going to happen, that Michael Pittman Jr. will not see all of the money that is due in the 3rd and final year of his contract. He is clearly the most likely to have to work through a renegotiated contract or look to play someplace else for year number 7. Who else is on that list that could be getting a phone call that says, thanks, but no thanks from the Indianapolis Colts?
Yeah, the 3 names that I have come back to under contract would be Pittman, of course, Zaire Franklin, and then there's a drop to a guy like Kenny Moore. But, anytime you've brought in a new defensive system, anytime you have guys, nearing 30, north of 30, they're due the amount of money that they're due. They're at the end of their contract. They're reaching the end of it. You can't ignore that. And it's been never really something Chris Ballard has done in parting ways with guys, particularly guys that he has re-signed, non-quarterbacks especially, to all of a sudden, save a little bit of cap space. But if you're going to do things that are not just Daniel Jones, Alec Pierce related here coming up in the next month or so, you have to do some of that
right.
stuff. So, again, Pittman for sure. Franklin would be next. Jermaine Pratt, who started next to him, pretty much the entire season. He is a free agent, so that's something to note. And I would say the one news item that I'll be curious about here in the next couple of weeks, Rake, is, what is the official word on Travaris Ward playing in 2026? That was kind of a looming, decision exiting the season. And just because he says he's playing, he also pretty much said at the end of the season, his next concussion, he would definitely be done. So, corner, I still think has to be somewhat of a need there. That could impact a little bit of the Kenny Moore situation. So, again, outside of Pierce and Jones, who gets the franchise tag there? I'm probably a little bit more Pierce than I am Jones. Those are probably kind of next on the list.
I was going to say, and this is much more of a Robert's Rules of Order question before we let you go. If Mooney retires, does all of that money come off the cap, or is there still going to be a cap hit for the Colts in 26?
Yeah, I believe it comes off. Again, I haven't really dealt with this. Obviously the Andrew Luck situation was much, much different, and how it was approached by Jim Irsay here. So I would think, and obviously, the business side of the NFL, players, from a contractual statement, they probably are going to get something. But, I think he would even look at it and say, as an undrafted free agent, I've made great money. I don't – maybe I'm being foolish here. Maybe his agent would try to squeeze every penny out of it. But I would like to think, this isn't some situation where, whatever, this is a guy that's on his rookie contract and this is it for him and he's going to be done. Mooney's made, I think, upwards of $50-60 million in his NFL career there. So, that's a big question, too, because Justin Whalley, their promising rookie from last year, he's coming off a torn ACL. And so, again, this is kind of where the Sauce Gardner trade now even looks, wow, he's really, really needed when you start to look at the cornerback depth chart, ages, contracts, injury situations, retirement situations, all of that.
What's coming up on the show tomorrow morning?
We've got, what do we have tomorrow? Today we had Travis Steele, by the way. I know you and I had that conversation driving up to South Bend a few weeks ago, among many.
So literally, as this was happening, I happened to be in the car while you had him on. I'm hearing him talk about 5 seconds, and I text Dyke, and I don't want to distract you during the show. And I said, Travis Steele, ? And he goes, yes, sir. I said, well, just for promotional purposes, so you know, Pete Suter joins the show at 5:25. So Miami getting all kinds of love on the radio station today.
Look at that. Well, I really enjoyed the Suter angle to it. I'll be curious to hear Pete tell that side of the story because, Travis Steele told us earlier today, basically, they played Bellarmine the first year at Miami, Ohio. He was blown away by Suter. He actually had a player committed to Miami of Ohio in the portal the day that Suter then announced he was entering the portal. And, just talk about the harsh reality of the business. Travis Steele liked Pete Suter so much, he had to tell that kid, hey, sorry about that, but we're actually going to retract that. And then Pete Suter, of course, committed to Miami, Ohio, and the rest is history of where he is now played out the rest of his career. So really enjoyed that conversation. We had him on earlier. So I believe tomorrow we'll get back a little bit more Colts-Pacers-centric, but that's really going to be one of the stories of March. Their run, obviously what they do the rest of the season. They're on ESPN 9 o'clock Friday, which I think is kind of cool on a quieter, weekend from a sports standpoint with the NBA just having the All-Star game. So enjoyed chatting with Travis Steele, and you know this more than anybody, but he's got Indiana connections galore growing up here and, his early coaching days. And I'll be curious just exactly where his coaching tree then, where he goes, if he's going to stay at Miami, Ohio, or if he could, find an opening here in Indiana at some point.
I am picking up what you're putting down. I get exactly what you are saying. Thanks for the time, my friend. Get us that private jet, all right?
Net Jets, Rake.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
See ya.
Kevin Bowen joining us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Now, if you are familiar with this show, you know that John rarely goes to break about now. Normally, this commercial breaks about like at 4:30, and he stretched that conversation with Kevin for at least a good 25, 26, 27 minutes. We had to move a guest, and so now I'm trying to fit and shoehorn 3 guests into this hour of the show. So because of that, we're going to break a little bit early, and we will take broadcaster transition here, a left turn, because that's pretty much what they do in NASCAR and even in IndyCar. And the guy that usually is in a turn describing said things would be Nick Yeoman. And in case you missed it earlier this week, Nick has been a part of the IndyCar radio network, I think, right out of his days from Ball State for like the last decade, maybe a little bit more. That is going to continue, but Nick has been now named the co-anchor of the Performance Racing Network, which means you'll hear about half the NASCAR broadcast coming up this season. He's done some. He's going to do a lot more. And it is Daytona week. So you know what? Let's get Nick on the show to talk about it. We'll do that when we come back. It's Greg Rakestraw filling in for JMV 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
Jim Perry, now talk to him, damn it.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
You know, as I was having that conversation with Kevin Bowen and checking all the boxes, I'm like, all right, Pacers last night, Purdue, Combine. Even if it had been like an overly successful NFL season for the Colts, which it was for 2 months, not for the last 2 months, we'd kind of get to this point of February and kind of say, all right, this is where we expand the palette a little bit. You know, we're not yet to the college basketball postseason. There is always this mid-February look towards auto racing, especially here in Indianapolis, knowing that you're starting to get less than 100 days. You're about to that point now for the running of the Indianapolis 500. And Daytona is somewhere, well, much closer than being simply in the rearview mirror. That is the case for our buddy Nick Yeoman, who has lived in both the IndyCar and NASCAR broadcast world for some time, but early this week was named as the new co-anchor of the Performance Racing Network. Buddy, I am so happy for you. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing very, very well, Greg. I appreciate it. Yeah, it is quite an honor to jump into the anchor chair with Brad Gilley with the Performance Racing Network. We'll get our season started a week after the Daytona 500 down in Atlanta at the newly rebranded Echo Park Speedway. But yeah, I'm super excited. It's going to be a different role. Spent a lot of time, broadcasting NASCAR races from the pits and the turns. So looking forward to getting this season started down in Daytona this weekend.
How many races were you doing for PRN, and now how many will it be this year?
Well, usually I was doing about 3 or 4 throughout the course of the season. I think their schedule kind of bounces around 15 or 16, and I'm going to do all of them but the Coca-Cola 600 because thankfully they're going to let me be in turn 1 for the Indianapolis 500. So I'll be doing I think it's 14 or 15 races with PRN on the NASCAR schedule. And that, of course, includes the Truck Series and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, formerly known as the Xfinity Series. So a lot of racing to be done on Nick Yeoman's calendar this year.
It's not like you and I have real jobs, but believe it or not, folks, we actually kind of do work during the week before we then show up and broadcast event on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday, or in Nick's case, like all 3 days when it comes to a lot of racing weekends. What does the prep load now look like for you, basically following 2 series on a full-time basis?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously you got to be in tune with all the newsmakers and following all the storylines. I mean, the biggest challenge for me is not having a super deep feel for the NASCAR garage and just all the names and faces. That's something that's just going to take time. I can walk through the IndyCar paddock at this point and chat with anybody. So yeah, it's a lot of homework and a lot of stat upkeep and all those little nuggets that you look for. Certainly consuming a lot of content throughout the week as well to make sure that I'm as prepared as possible. So yeah, I've been diving in head first, and that's kind of been my winter project, is just consuming as much as possible to get ready for the season. People
will kind of ask, hey, if you can do play-by-play of different sports, and I say, listen, as long as you know the lexicon or can talk the lingo of the sport, play-by-play travels. And again, let's not make this overly complicated. You're going from racing to racing. But there is some terminology that is different between IndyCar and NASCAR. Have you started to kind of do those gymnastics in your head to go, hey, I'm in IndyCar, I should say this, as compared to I'm in NASCAR today, I should say that?
Absolutely. In fact, I think I just used one with the IndyCar paddock. I'm not going to be calling it the NASCAR paddock, the NASCAR garage area. And some of them, and our good friend Mark James, he and I have had long conversations about this. Some of the IndyCar terms that are used in the open wheel world, I think, are a little too Formula One-esque. So we try not to use oversteer and understeer or liveries. I'm still a sucker for, hey, the car's tight, it's loose, or it's a really nice paint scheme on no matter what the car is. But yes, all of those little details are something that I look forward to kind of bouncing back and forth week by week.
As a guy that tries to speak American soccer, I know exactly what you're talking about. You try to use some of the terminology, but not go completely European or Premier League. Even though I don't say Premier, I say Premier, as you just heard me say when it comes to talking about that specific league, so I understand. Liveries I'm down with. It's when I hear Delta. I'm like, no, dude, you're 3 seconds back. That's the way that works. So I understand completely what you're saying, Nick.
Yeah, and I've always had a problem with shunts
I call them crashes. They're accidents. But here's the thing, Greg. You and I are both kind of idiots from Indiana, so, like, there's going to be a certain lexicon of English language that we're going to use that nobody around the country, no matter where you're at, is going to pick up on. So that's, I think, we call flavor to a broadcast.
Yeah, you and I speak Hoosier, and we're damn proud of it.
Right.
And to that point, you're going to stay here? You're going to relocate to Charlotte? What's the plan for you?
Initial plan right now is I'm going to stay local here in Indiana. I live about an hour up the road up in Lafayette, West Lafayette area. And the beauty of it is, 30, 40 years ago, you would feel like you'd need to be at the center of that motorsports. But, man, with technology and the way, it's not hard to get somebody on a phone call, not hard to live stream, via the web. It's just, I think it makes it a lot easier. So down the road, maybe one day we'll see. But in the short term, no, I plan on staying a Hoosier.
The very unique thing is that my friend who has grown up and stayed in the Lafayette area, other than his days of being a Ball State Cardinal, and he's actually explained this in a previous conversation years back, he is a massive Carolina Panthers fan. So you mean to tell me life has given you an opportunity to relocate and get season tickets, and you're still saying, nah, I want to live here?
I mean, Greg, have you watched the last 6 or 7 seasons?
Hey, your team was division champs this year, buddy, okay? Just throwing it out there.
With a losing record, yes, it does feel like maybe they're starting to turn the corner. So, I'll just say nothing's off the table. I would love to live down in the Charlotte area. There's no doubt.
Is there a driver or a storyline that you're kind of looking forward to being around, chronicling the most as you make this move to NASCAR on a more full-time basis?
Greg, I especially heading into 2026, I don't know if it's a driver as much as it is a storyline involving the change with NASCAR's points format. They have done away with the playoffs, and now it's kind of what is new is old again, or whatever the phrase is. They brought back this chase for the championship, and I think it's going to change the way a lot of these drivers, compete week in, week out, where I think consistency is going to matter. So that's going to be the big one from start to finish. If I did have to pick a driver, I got to circle Denny Hamlin. He has had just an unbelievable last 6 months where he very nearly shoulda, coulda, woulda closed the door on a championship in the final race in Phoenix. Then, of course, was involved in a really highly publicized lawsuit with his fellow car owner, Michael Jordan, where they actually sued the sport of NASCAR. And then just a horrifically tragic story, a house fire, claims the life of his father and almost took his mother. She's recovering. So Denny Hamlin and he's gone through an unbelievable shift as well, going from a guy that I don't think a lot of NASCAR fans gravitated to a guy that I think could be a feel-good story. So watching him navigate this really just, rough off season and now come into a new season is something that I'm looking forward to tracking.
And as I look at Denny, I go, man, he's kind of the last of a generation as well. Like, Keselowski would be of that group. Kyle Busch would be of that group. But that's about it. How much longer do you think Denny does what he's doing? He's going to be involved as a car owner. How much longer is he driving?
Well, I know he's got another 2 years on his contract, and he has said that at the end of 2027, that's probably when he walks away from the sport as a driver. Now, of course, once we get there, we'll see if the feelings change. But you're right, he has set himself up certainly long-term to be a part of the sport. But it is wild to watch how NASCAR changes because there was such an exodus of these household names 5-10 years ago when Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Kevin Harvick retire, and now you've got this last leg of these veterans of Keselowski, Kyle Busch, who I think both of them really not from a performance standpoint as good as they were at one time, but Denny Hamlin is kind of that last guy that is still performing at a really high level and trying to hang with those guys that are the household names like Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell, William Byron, who week in, week out are awful tough to beat.
So when you get to Atlanta in a couple of weeks, do you go find Chase Briscoe and say, hello, fellow Hoosier? Do you go find Austin Cindric and say, hey, I've talked to your dad for like ever? Or do you try, if it's a race that Jimmy is going to run, you go, remember me? Do you start saddling up to the guys that you have some ties with in the IndyCar series? You're back to this state?
Yeah, it's so funny that the 1 year that Jimmy Johnson ran an IndyCar, I think it was still like
the COVID year.
It was during the pandemic. So like, even though he was a part of IndyCar for a full season, never really. I mean, I think I interacted with him maybe 4 or 5 times because he just, everybody was so separated. So I think that's kind of the cool thing. And you know this from broadcasting sports is really getting involved and meeting the people and establishing those relationships so that you can tell their story along with calling an exciting event, when folks tune in. That's what I think I'm looking forward to most. And NASCAR's got a lot of good ones that I think are worth being told. And I think Chase Briscoe was certainly one of those. He very nearly won the championship a year ago. He was in the Final Four in NASCAR's playoff system. Now it's going to be consistency that is rewarded, and Chase is the kind of guy. I look at the way he performs week in, week out at the different types of racetracks. I think he's going to be very strong again driving for the coach, Joe Gibbs.
Final thing on the NASCAR front, we'll bring it back to IndyCar as we wrap up our conversation. Nick Yeoman, again, brand new co-anchor, the Performance Racing Network, joining us here on the Ride Without JMV on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. So are you watching this Sunday as like a fan? You got like the notebook out taking notes? Are we scouting on Sunday? How's it going to work out for you?
Oh no, I'm watching it a lot differently than I have in past years. That's for sure. I'll be studying and writing notes and just try to consume everything that I can. So looking forward to it. I mean, it's the Great American Race. It's a big event. Probably should have planned a trip down there. Just kind of the schedule caught up with me and kicked it off down there and enjoyed it and met a lot of people, but I'll be excited to get down to Atlanta next week.
All right, so when the IndyCar season starts in 2 weeks, that is one of the races you'll miss because you will be at COTA as the stock cars turn left and right. But if I asked you for simply immediate thoughts onto the IndyCar season that will be when it starts up in a couple of weeks, what immediately comes to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one is can Alex Palou just continue to just absolutely assault the record book? I mean, this guy is on another level, and based on some of the practice speeds that I've seen, the IndyCar series has been down in Sebring, Florida the last couple of days doing a lot of testing. Alex looks pretty strong. But I think there are some other names of drivers that I think are going to be sneaky good. Marcus Armstrong for Meyershank Racing really showed some pace. I thought he also looked a little beefed up, like he's put on some muscle. He's not a very big guy. I think he's knocking on the door of being a first-time winner. And then, obviously, the run to May and the build-up, and there's going to be a couple big storylines there. You know, Pato Award has been so close. Scott McLaughlin really had a very un-Penske-like year. Team Penske as a whole had a very un-Penske-like year to see if Joseph Newgarden can get back on track. David Malukas jumps into that Verizon 12 car that Will Power vacated. So a lot of great storylines, but, boy, everyone has got to find a way to find whatever Alex Palou has found in the IndyCar series. We didn't see it last year. New season starts up. Everyone's going to take their shot at him for sure.
All right, final thing before we let you go. I realize this, has usually been extended to drivers. Did anybody actually think about maybe getting you a helicopter and a private jet and having you call 1,100 miles of racing on Memorial Day weekend?
Well, Greg, I think this is a good way to admit that I don't have a lot of expensive and rich friends. I need to start shopping that around. So if anybody that has a private jet or a helicopter, you're not using it, I wouldn't mind borrowing it. I am going to need, refreshments and drinks and everything, the whole 9 yards. But no, listen, it's something I'd love to do at some point. Our good friend Doug Rice, who was a longtime anchor of the Performance Racing Network, we had him down about a decade ago, and he pulled the Doug's double. And if I can ever pull the double, I'd be all for it, man. 1,100 miles. Better get the throat lozenges ready to hang and then be able to pull that off.
We need to have those overlapping circles. Has private jet. Wants to be Nick Spotter for 1,100 miles. We find those overlaps. There's your opportunity. Again, buddy, I'm so happy for you. I know it kicks off the craziness next weekend in Atlanta. Go enjoy it. I'm sure I'll pass across soon. Take care.
All the best, Greg. Thank you.
Nick Yeoman, again, you used to hearing him on this radio station, and you still will, but you'll also hear him throughout the NASCAR season as well. And yes, Daytona is coming up this weekend if you're looking for something to watch on the television coming up on Sunday afternoon. We'll take this quick time out. Something else that's going to be playing on Sunday will be the Indiana Hoosiers. That'll where Zach Osterman's focus will be. And he will join us next. It's Greg Rakestraw filling in for JMV, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
But I'm a genetic freak, and I'm not normal.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
That'd be Scott Steiner, correct? There we go. John has no idea who that would be, correct?
Not a clue.
No freaking clue whatsoever. Scott Recksteiner, his actual name. Now that his kids are done playing college football and moving on to the family business as well. Greg Rakestraw in for JMV. He is back tomorrow. You know, John can take days off whenever he darn well pleases. His two tweets, though, over the last few hours. One was of what appeared to be a Steelers letter jacket. And the other one from a board game or puzzle or something like it, seemingly from the 1960s. So that's what's been keeping John busy today. He'll tell you all about it when he comes back tomorrow. We've been keeping the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline busy because Zach Osterman, on his day off, is kind enough to join us now. But I'm just happy you got days off. How you doing?
Hey, sorry about earlier. That is entirely my fault.
That is quite all right. I'm glad we were able to track you down. You enjoying your day off?
I'm doing my best.
Well, obviously, it was a very enjoyable football season. Could not have been more enjoyable. Have you recovered from said football season? Are you still writing about said football season at this point?
Yeah, I think what you learn when you cover football at the level that Indiana's been playing at these last couple years is that the season never really ends, especially, anymore. I mean, I had something that went up today that I filed last week, just kind of the first of a long series of sort of position breakdowns that, frankly, were as useful to me as I think they might be to any reader, just to remind myself, basically, who's new, who's old, who's back, who's transferred in, because all that stuff happens basically at once. And so, you kind of forget in the cut and thrust of the portal, which basically happened between the Rose Bowl and the Peach Bowl, and then between the Peach Bowl and the national title game, who comes in the door, who heads out the door, what the two deep might look like kind of going forward. You sort of forget half of what came from that just kind of hectic period. And I think what you learn is that football season never really stops getting talked about.
This is kind of, us talking shop, but I think it is a sign of again, just how expansive, Indiana football and covering the team has become. Has there been talk about separating the beats? I'm not trying to create less work for you, but because now you have to follow this 12 months a year, might there be a time in the near future where there is an Indiana football beat writer and there's an Indiana basketball beat writer, and those are two separate people?
I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever go that far. I think there's still, especially because there's, there are two of us. The Herald Times and the Star are both falling the same umbrella. So Mike Nislik and I, kind of work a lot of it together. So I don't know if we're ever going to get to a place where it's fully separated like that. I think we'll probably keep doing it together.
All right. One more Fleece football thing, and then we'll kind of make the move over to basketball. From an Indiana fan standpoint, I was almost pleasantly surprised that a handful of guys that could have gone into the draft elected to stay. Did that catch you by surprise at all?
No, and just in the sense that, each guy's situation is different. Sometimes you'll wind up in a situation where a guy feels like he's got to go for one reason or another. Sometimes you'll wind up in a situation where maybe a guy plays a position and the feedback that he gets back from the draft is, hey, it's kind of loaded at your spot this year, but next year maybe it's a little bit different. And especially when you look at some of the guys that came back, if we're talking about, because the other side of this, of course, is the money that they can make in college now. If we're talking about some of the guys that elected to come back, they do play pretty premium positions from the perspective of what you would probably expect them to get even in like a one-year situation in college. So think about Tyreek Tucker, you think about Carter Smith, an All-American defensive tackle, an All-American left tackle. Those are going to be positions that, a college roster is not going to work that differently to a pro roster from a money perspective. The premium positions are still going to command the most money. And so, if you're at maybe like a skill position, you think about like running back or something, and I'm not singling out any specific player that left this year. I mean, the two Indiana running backs that left because they had no eligibility remaining. But, if you think about the way it works in the NFL, that tends not to be a premium position for most teams, whereas quarterback, blindside tackle, defensive line, those are spots where you tend to put your money. In pro football. It's the same in college. And so those were maybe guys that were going to have a little bit more financial opportunity if they stayed for another year as opposed to going to the draft.
Again, Zach Osterman, Indianapolis Star, all things Indiana University Athletics and the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. To basketball we go. How long now, as a student and working for the Herald Times and for the Star, how long have you been around Bloomington at this point, Zach?
For the best part of 21 years.
Okay. In the last 21 years, is there a player that reminds you of the run that Lamar Wilkerson has been on for this Indiana basketball team?
The only one would be Eric Gordon. I kind of pulled some of these stats together the other night. Two of the 40-point performances since 1990 from an Indiana player now belong to him. There are only 4 players that have done 40-point games twice in a season in Indiana history. That's George McGinnis, Jimmy Rayl, Don Schlunt, and now Wilkerson. And I'm not taking anything away from those other 3, but that's, basketball was kind of different then. The ball moved differently. Offenses moved differently. I'm not acting like it was easy what those players did, but I think it was more normalized, the idea that you would have one player that did the lion's share of your scoring when you look at the numbers from someone like like Jimmy Rayl, like Don Schlunt, and so forth. He would be right now the highest scoring guard, or the first 20-point-a-game guard since Eric Gordon. Different player, obviously. Gordon, especially because Indiana fans of a certain vintage, my vintage, I guess, at this point, will remember that Gordon spent a decent amount of that season injured. And so, it's not – Gordon got his points differently is kind of what I'm trying to say. But the sort of class that the company he's keeping, that is the term I'm looking for, is pretty rare at this point in terms of both what he is doing, statistically, and also how he's doing it. When you think about the way he's getting these shots, and you think about the fact, it's not like he's taken 27 shots a game. I mean, he got the 44-point performance against Penn State, I think, in 24 minutes, if memory serves. So there's a real efficiency when he is scoring at this level to what he's doing. But to your point, he's kind of gone up a level now. It's either the last 6 or the last 7 games. He's averaging more than 28 points per. He is entering a sort of rare class at this point.
What were the expectations for him coming in? Because obviously everybody thought Tucker DeVries was going to be the star. He's been solid. He's not been spectacular. What exactly sort of player did Darren DeVries think he was bringing in the kid from Sam Houston?
I mean, I think the hope was that DeVries and Wilkerson would occupy sort of, almost kind of equal roles in some ways, that they would be foils. And of course, DeVries, I think it probably has a little bit more of the role that we expected from him in terms of sometimes running the offense, initiating the offense, and being kind of that focal point. Not that Wilkerson was never going to have the ball in his hands. I mean, he's not just a shooter. He's not just a spot-up shooter. He has kind of the credentials of a player that can get on the ball, that can create a shot, get downhill, get into the lane, get to the rim. I think probably he's seeing more workload now because Indiana has kind of struggled to get Tucker DeVries going in the same way. And I don't know if, I think there's maybe a few different conversations to be had about, for example, is Tucker DeVries in some ways almost having to put more of his energy into other things because you've had Tate Connerway injured and you do need, somebody that can just kind of really pull the strings of the offense and, of course, knows it very well too. And I think that maybe it's not by accident that it feels like Connor Enright is playing some of his best basketball at the same time that Lamar Wilkerson is playing some of his, and at the same time that maybe we're starting to see Tucker DeVries find a little bit more offensive comfort, that maybe there's somebody taking a little bit of that sort of ball handler, creator, initiator responsibility off of DeVries. I think Indiana always envisioned, though, that this would be the kind of role that Wilkerson would have. Maybe not necessarily 21 points per game. Again, you never you're never going to sit there and predict, the kind of sort of record-setting performances that he's put in. But certainly that he would be one of this team's alphas, that he would be, both an initiator and also someone that the offense functioned around when he didn't have the ball in his hands. And you could even go back to Puerto Rico in August. I was down there for those 3 games. Indiana was really intentional, very clearly, about putting that ball in Tucker DeVries' hands and in Lamar Wilkerson's hands, and that obviously has not changed.
Because our questions we've asked of this Indiana team are different than, say, of Purdue, where there were different expectations going in. Again, I have labeled this as a pass-fail year. Did you make the NCAA tournament or not? Clearly, it's not guaranteed, but it appears to be heading in that direction. What questions to you does this Indiana's team still have to answer with a month left to go or 3 weeks to go in the regular season before we get to the Big Ten tournament?
I mean, I think really, in a lot of ways, I think that, there were kind of these dual tracks. I like the way you called it pass-fail. I think there were these dual tracks to what Indiana needed out of this season. And one was maybe the idea that, listen, if you're going to put this much money and these kinds of resources into your roster, like the NCAA tournament needs to be just a baseline expectation. And I don't think that's unfair. I don't think that's unreasonable. But I think there was also this, especially because you understood with the way that Darren DeVries elected to build this roster, that it was going to get turned over pretty substantially after this season. Before a ball was dribbled in anger, we could have looked at this roster and said, in all likelihood, most of the big minutes getters here are probably going to be one-year players that, you wouldn't have. There aren't a lot of guys that are heavily in the rotation right now that have 1 year left, that would not have been the expectation back in June and July when this roster came together for the summer. So you knew that no matter what kind of the end result of this specific season was, the roster was going to need significant retooling going into next spring, or I guess this spring now, if you think about where we are on the calendar. And so kind of the parallel question of this season was one of proof of concept. Do you like, if you are Indiana, if you are Scott Dolson, if you are Darren DeVries, certainly if you're an Indiana fan, do you like kind of the proof of concept that Darren DeVries' system and process, the sets he runs, the way his teams play basketball, the way his team evolves over the course of the season, does all that stuff give you hope for the future when the roster won't need to be turned over all 13 scholarships at once? You're not hiring a brand new staff and moving in completely and almost 100% turnover of a program all the way down to, I think, everything but the furniture in the office. I think the proof of concept, at least from my point of view, and this is a much more subjective question, so reasonable folks can disagree. For me, the proof of concept, I think at this point is there. That you can see the philosophy, the way that Indiana plays basketball, what Darren DeVries is trying to do, the way that his teams are structured, even to a certain extent, the season's not over, but the way that this team, I would argue, has continued to evolve and get better as the season's gone on. I think you feel good about that if you're Indiana. And I think that, the question of, given time and, he and his staff doing the right work in roster construction and player development, does the basketball part of it make sense long term? I think the answer to that, from my perspective, is yes. Then you just return to that first question, which is, if you're Indiana, and this isn't even necessarily the banners on the wall and all the history, but it is, if nothing else, just the resources you put into basketball. It's not unreasonable to say that except for the years where sort of total calamity ensues, you need to be making the tournament. And I think that's the only other question here. And from Indiana's perspective, at this point, that's basically just about quality wins. Can they pick up enough quality wins? The metrics, they have firmed up the floor underneath them from a metric perspective. Their net, their Ken Palm, all those kinds of things have looked good. That's, when people like me were talking about not winning enough of those sort of throwaway non-conference games in November and December by enough points, with enough, good numbers from shooting numbers, defensive numbers, whatever. That's what you accomplish when you win those games the way Indiana did this year, is you really firm up the floor underneath yourself analytically. Now, if you're Indiana, you just need wins, and it's a very high major bubble this year. Like, there are not very many mid-majors there. There aren't a lot of sort of mid-major bid thieves lurking around, in the sense that there aren't a lot of mid-major conferences where there are 2 or 3 teams that can get an at-large, and then maybe 3 or 4 teams that could sneak up and win their conference. Like, the bubble's going to be dominated by high-major teams this year. That should favor a team with a profile like Indiana's, but they just need quality at this point.
Zach, my friend, as always, thanks, buddy. We'll do it again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You got it, buddy. Zach Osterman of the Indianapolis Star. College basketball. I mean, it's Indiana's everywhere, right? But college basketball is where a focus for a good chunk of the rest of the show. That'll continue when we come back. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
Give me my theme music.
93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Final hour of substitute teaching for me for today. Not the final hour you hear me by a long shot on this radio station this weekend. I've got On the Horizon tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. I've got Soccer Saturday at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan, and something not on this frequency, but just down the dial on 92.7 tonight would be Butler and UConn. And obviously, normally, if I'm going to bring up a game at Hinkle Fieldhouse, we're talking about the Butler Bulldogs, but not in this case. UConn is really good, and one of their best players, well, I've known his dad for like a quarter of a century at this point, and said dad is on the program. The star player is Braylon Mullins. His dad, Josh, is pre-gaming as we speak before going to Hinkle Fieldhouse. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. How you doing, Greg?
I'm fine. Not that you haven't been circling this date on your calendar, knowing how close that Braylon was playing to home, but the last game was at Madison Square Garden. What was it like to watch your son play at Madison Square Garden?
That was pretty surreal, man. You get, a lot of the NBA arenas are on the Big East, schedule. So watching them play, with the Knicks play and just a lot of history there, it was kind of surreal. A lot of hostile fans there, that was for sure.
How many games have you and the missus gone to? Every game? Has it been select? What's your travel been like this year?
We've been to most. It's more of the only reason we wouldn't go to all is because he's got twin brothers that are here. So
right.
So we had to pick and choose some of those, but we try to go to all of them that we can make. But that throws a wrinkle in it when your brothers play here in Greenfield. So it's kind of hard to get back and forth.
All right. What, because you've been to Fog Island Fieldhouse, obviously home games. Was MSG the favorite venue? Is it playing in this one? What's been the favorite you've been to so far?
I mean, I think it's right now it's either MSG or Fog Island. Those are two historic arenas. Not too many people go in and win it in Kansas. It's really hard. But MSG special too, There's just so much history in that arena, that stadium. So I think that they're kind of equal, but the Kansas one was really, really special. For one, obviously they haven't lost there much. We were the only loss they got this year. Obviously they just beat Arizona a couple nights ago. So both pretty special.
Again, Josh Mullins, you might know his son Braylon, star player at Greenfield Central last year, Mr. Basketball now, star for the UConn Huskies, our guest. They play Butler tonight. Greg Rakestraw filling in for JMV here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. What is the ticket count like for the Mullins friends and family entourage this evening?
Well, listen, I only got 20, but that's only because I knew that everybody else already bought their tickets, but I think it's 300 plus from Greenfield, which is pretty special, pretty awesome for us and Braylon.
Well, I'm trying to think of what the biggest crowd to watch you play at IUPUI. It was something smaller than 300 from the friends and family account. Maybe the Kentucky game in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, this kid was pretty good before he got there, and even after that injury, he kind of hit the ground running. What has been the biggest improvement in your son's game that you have seen so far this year?
I think really it's just everything's slowing down for him, and I think he's handling the physicality really well. Like people always get after him about he's not strong enough, he can't play there, can't play here, and I think he's handling that really well. But when you sit out games and you miss the beginning of the season, this is kind of where you're at. You're just trying to catch back up. So I think that's what he's doing right now. And I think he's doing a really, really good job. But I just the physicality part, I think that's the biggest thing.
Why was UConn the right place for him when he made this decision, you and the family, about a year or so ago at this point?
Well, I think that the one thing that, we decided on, listen, I know everybody thinks that we hate IU, Purdue, Butler, or whatever. It wasn't the case. I thought that Coach Hurley and their staff could pull Braylon's personality out of him and get the very best from him. Plus, the system just fits what he does well. So, it's really what it boiled down to. Coach Hurley, Coach Murray, those guys are awesome. They do a great job with Braylon, not just Braylon, but the whole team. We've seen it for the last 3 to 5 years, the stuff that they do. So, well,
again, because you played at a high level, that playing at an even higher level, your son's going to get coached, a.k.a. there's going to be times where coach is going to be in his grill. How has he responded to that? Because Dan is not shy about that. How has Braylon and you guys responded to that during the year?
Well, I think that was the one that Braylon says sometimes, he just takes the coaching. He's like, I've already heard it from you. So so I don't, and he goes, it's just at a different level. I just, he's just like, I laugh at it sometimes. And Hurley's like, what are you laughing at? And he's like, it's just more of you. And I have to take something out of this, make it funny to make me get through it. So Hurley was like, okay, I got you. So I think Braylon, he doesn't let a lot bother him. But I think when Hurley gets after him, he doesn't take it as a joke, but he just has to laugh and push through. So
obviously it is a different era, and I'm not asking you to share dollar figures with me. I want to make sure you do that and that right off the jump. But again, you can stay in college basketball and make a pretty good living, or you can also go to the NBA. How much consideration has Braylon, has you, has Mom? How much have you guys started to think about, all right, is this one and done at UConn? Is it off to the league? When does that process kick into high gear?
I mean, I think it gets talked about a lot right now. You know, people on social media, Twitter, they put a lot of stuff out there, so it's really hard to ignore. But, you know me, I love college basketball. I would love for him to stay for 4 years. I just know that's not real. You know, I think that, you know, if he's got a shot, you know, the first-round pick, lottery, he's probably going to leave. But like I said, we love college basketball. He loves it at UConn. So there's always that in the back of his mind. But I don't know. As long as he stays in that top 15, I think, you know, there's always that. Hey, why not? You know, it's generational money. You know.
Has there been a favorite moment? And I talked about this. I said it likens for me. It's like watching George when he first started playing the NBA. I just start laughing. There are times I see Braylon hit a shot and I go, I've known that kid, you know, for when he was much younger than he is now. Is there like a favorite moment or like a moment where you're like, I can't believe I'm watching my son do this over the course of this season?
No, I mean, I think that was, you know, when we walked in the first time to MSG and we played Illinois over Thanksgiving, I was just like, this is wow, you know. You know, and that was his first game back too. So that's the first game I really got to watch him play. And it was more about, you know, he's coming straight off the injury and it was just like, hey, we just want to see if he can run up and down the court. We don't even care what he does. Like, we're just going to let him play, run him down the court. We want to see if he's okay. And that moment at MSG, your first game, I was just like, whoa. And then, you know, the second game he comes and plays, he has 17 at Kansas and we win. And then you're just like, man, these moments, you just got to, you know, keep them close because, you know, they don't happen for everybody.
You've touched on this. I want to make sure I point this out. Braylon is not your only son. Your twin boys are having their senior year at Greenfield Central. How has that gone for them?
They're doing well, man. There's this experience. They're 8-10 right now. They're playing they're playing their butts off. So like, that's all you can ask for. You know, I think the inexperience is what's getting to them right now, but I think they're playing really well. The team's doing good. I think people, you know, didn't have high expectations for them, but, you know, I think they're surprising some people.
Are you still hooping at all, or are you too busy watching your kids' games to hoop at this point?
I still play a little bit, but not like I used to. It's more about travel now, so I'm getting too dang old for that anyway. So, but yeah, Saturdays and Sundays I still play when I can, when I'm here. And when I'm not, I come back and they're like, hey, whenever you're here, just show up. So.
You are a little busy. You are a bit of a road warrior. So I'll spin this forward and I'll let you go be a dad and go enjoy the rest of your evening. If Braylon makes the move to the NBA, have you started to think about how many NBA games you and the wife might go see next year?
At least half. half for sure. So if we can get in there, that's definitely half. I don't know that I'll make them all, but we're definitely going to be there a lot. We'll be there at the first one. So whether he's playing or not, then we'll go from there. But, you know, like all this is surreal. It's been fun. It's been rushed. Everything's went so dang fast. We're just trying to enjoy a lot of it right now. So
I'll also plant another seed in your brain. If he's going to the NBA draft, he's going to be a lottery pick, which means you're going to have to be there. Which means you better up your suit game. So you better start planning your suit attire for late June now. Just saying.
Hey, I've got people that's behind us now that's taking care of the suit game for us, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. That's what those agents are good for now. So once you get an agent, you take care of a lot of that.
All right, good. Go be a dad. Go enjoy it. Thanks for the time, my friend. Have fun tonight.
Thanks, Greg. Have a good one, man.
You got it. Josh Mullins, again, now these days known as Braylon's dad. So I thought, all right, if I'm going to be hosting the show today, I would do things a little bit differently. And I thought I would have liked to have gotten Braylon on. I didn't want to ask for the kid on game day, you know, because they're playing like 2.5 hours from now. I don't think Coach Hurley was going to let Braylon come on the show today on the day of the game. So I thought, next best thing, how about I get Dad on the show? And that is the thing that is a little bit different for me when you do this job, is that they're not just some basketball player or some number. You know the family behind the scenes. And I thought that was unique to be able to showcase that perspective with you. Hope you enjoyed it. Phone lines are open now if there's something you want to talk about. 317-239-1070. Whether you want to text said number, whether you want to call said number, you can always interact with me on Twitter at Greg Rakestraw. We have another guest scheduled for later this hour. That time might be in a bit of flux, so I'm working on it. In other words, you got something you want to say? Now's the time. 317-239-1070. Jerome has been on hold. Let's remedy that. Good evening, Jerome. How you doing?
How you doing, my brother? You doing okay?
I'm good. Yourself?
Pretty good. Shout out to Josh Mullins, man. He's an incredible guy, has a great son. Josh can still put the ball on the hole. Don't let him fool you, man. He's a good guy, man.
So, I do the City League Championship every year. The first year I did that, which is now 6 years ago, the star player for the winning team would have been Officer Josh Mullins. So believe me, I know the dude can still hoop. Absolutely.
Got a question about that lottery pick since we're in the subject of college basketball, so forth with the Pacers. Man, the way our luck has been going, I don't know if we really should have tried to do that little, protected pick, because it'll be our luck that we get the fifth pick. We're going to have to lose, and everybody knows this. So I know me and you have not always been in agreement with this. We have to tank.
Tank. Got to tank.
So now this is the first time you're going to laugh when we agree. It's time to invoke the Lance Stevenson. Bring him back, man. Bring him back so we can tank. And while you're at it, sign TJ Lees. Go get some George Hill. Matter of fact, go get O.J. Mayo. Just go get anybody.
All the old dudes, huh? Bring him out of retirement?
Yeah. And I'm a little worried about this kid at Kansas, man, the health.
Right.
He plays real well, and he misses a lot of games, man. I mean, in college you can kind of hide that, but in an 82-game season, man, he can't do back-to-back. There's something going on with that kid's health. That's the only thing I worry about with him. I like Boozer, but Boozer's kind of peaked to where he's at. Because if you look at Boozer, nothing against Boozer, if you were looking at these guys and you had to guess who he was, Boozer reminds me of Juwan Howard. And A.J. DeBansta, if we're lucky, he turns out to be Chris Webber. Not trying to be funny, but that's just, how it looks. Whereas this kid, Peterson, he reminds me a lot of Donovan Mitchell with a little bit of Brandon Roy mixed in.
Thank you, Jerome. Appreciate the telephone call. I'm a little concerned about Peterson as well. And I know that he seemingly is the top of the pops. I understand the idea of being cautious with your health when you are the likely number one pick. But at the same time, you heard me talking about this with Josh Mullins. You don't have to hide around these things now, man. These cats are all getting paid. All right? And Peterson is a pro. I don't know exactly what he's making at Kansas. My guess would be it's north of 7 figures. And you've missed a lot of time while being paid. That comes across as a bit of a red flag to me. And so you think, hey, listen, if you're going to stink, you might as well stink to the point of getting the number one pick in the draft. I'm not so sure that the best option for the Pacers is to be 2, 3, or 4 at this point and let somebody else kind of deal with that. Now, maybe my opinion will change based on what could happen over the next 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks. But when you miss the time that he has, I tend to go, you know what? Maybe you can be somebody else's star of the future. And I think you compared Cameron Boozer to Juwan Howard. I'm okay with that. Like, Juwan played for like 20 years in the league. I'm okay with that. If DeBanza is Chris Webber, I'm okay with that too. Now, frankly, this is where I will raise my hand. I do not watch the level of major college basketball that the guy that normally sits in this chair does. Frankly, it's something I need to do more of just because of where the Indiana Pacers are going to be picking this year. And seemingly that 4 cutoff seems to be Peterson, DeBanza, Boozer, and Caleb Wilson of North Carolina. That seems to be where the conversation is had. By the way, since we just had Dad on the show, figured I'd also share with you where Braylon Mullins is listed right now. 10th. Again, mock drafts will change, but 10th. And to give you an idea as to, and again, it's a different day now, and maybe guys get drafted more as sophomores or juniors because of the money they can make in college. But for what it's worth, the prognostication I have in front of me, top 13 players in their mock draft are all freshmen. Maybe this was one hell of a class that was put together for this year. 317-239-1070 is the telephone number. By the way, we had announced Pete Suter for the next segment of the show. Pete has asked to do the last segment of the show. So Pete Suter around 5:40. So we might change a little bit kind of when we go to break in this hour for that reason. Jimmy has dialed us up next. Hello, Jimmy. How are you?
Hey, Greg. How are you, my friend?
I knew it was you. It's good to hear your voice. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, two things real quick, and then I'll get to my Yukon Butler's take. I always love how you and the rest of the indie sports media treat me, especially at Colts training camp, where it's so personable and everything. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Of course.
And second, I admire you and Kevin for making the road trip up US 31 to watch that Notre Dame Fighting Irish basketball team.
Jimmy, I had been snowed in for 3 days. I always enjoy hanging out with Kevin Bowen. The seats we have at Notre Dame are fantastic. Ryan Owens, assistant coach, is our hookup there. So KB and I have a good time. I really appreciate it because I'd have been in my house for like 72 straight hours. I was starting to get like some COVID flashbacks, Jimmy. I was a little concerned. So I appreciate that trip this year more than any other time, believe me.
Yes, well, I live vicariously through Kevin, so listening to your stories is great. But on the Yukon Butler game tonight, Greg, what in your mind? I think Butler's going to surprise some people tonight, and I don't really have much to base that on, unfortunately. But I just think the energy in the building is going to be great, and I think Butler. Like I said, I don't have much to base it on, but I think whenever the Hinkle Magic is still alive and well, what would constitute a good turnout for you? Obviously, upsetting Utah would be great, but in your mind, what would be a good turnout for Butler tonight? And you have a great night, Greg. Take care, my friend.
Thanks, Jimmy. Good to talk to you. I know I'll see you soon. Butler just doesn't have the horses. And again, I had their game against Wright State, so I saw them up close and personal, kind of prep for them like I would have broadcast. And, you know, I don't think even with Jalen Jackson and or Stink Robinson, I don't think they match up well with UConn. But you take away basically your two lead guards, and now you're having a different conversation. You know, Finley Bizjack can be your playmaker, and they've got some size. But if you've struggled with Georgetown, if you've struggled with Marquette, and in comes the best team in the league, who, again, you just heard Josh Mullen say he thinks the ticket count's about 300 people are rooting for UConn. Hinkle's always going to be a home court advantage. It's always going to be electric when it's a big-time team that's coming in. Just don't think things are trending in the right direction currently for the Bulldogs. Doesn't mean they can't pull the upset, but they may be hurt by the fact that UConn did just lose their last time out. Still smarting a bit from the loss against a good St. John's team on Friday night. So, for your standpoint, again, I'm by no means anti-Butler. It's been one of the few times that I'm not kind of openly rooting for Butler in a big-time Big East game just because I'm connected to one of the players on the other side. So I hope for good things for Butler, but right now it's not trending in that direction, unfortunately. Jimmy, thanks for the telephone call. All right, open phone lines next segment. Anything we've talked about today you want to talk about, now is the time to dial us up. 317-239-1070. Tweet to me as well, at Greg Rakestraw. That works too. It's The Ride, sans JMV, between now and 6 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
And the beat goes on, yeah. And the beat goes on.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
John is back tomorrow, and for that, there is much rejoicing. Greg Rakestraw filling in for JMV. I have not checked to see any more of his fines of whatever shopping he was doing after reporting that I saw him checking out a board game from what appeared to be 1968 and a Steelers jacket that appeared to be from sometime in the late 70s. He'll tell you all about it tomorrow on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan. Guest to end the show. So you've got a few minutes if there's something you want to say via the telephone lines. Great, 317-239-1070. Something you want to say via Twitter, that's fine too, at Greg Rakestraw. Mention this in passing with both Kevin Bowen and then Zach Osterman. The Combine is in 2 weeks, more or less. Guess it starts 15 days from now. And we knew that it would have more of an Indiana flavor than ever before. Here are the players that you can watch if you are going to the Combine. Now, Fernando Mendoza is going to be there. He's not going to wait to throw into his pro day, which I think is April the 1st. Roman Hemby will be going through things. Omar Cooper Jr., Elijah Surratt will be representing the wide receivers. Riley Nowakowski from a tight end perspective. Pat Coogan from a lineman perspective. From a defensive standpoint for Indiana, as I scroll through all of the various names. From a linebacker standpoint, Aiden Fisher, he of a 1, a 2, you know what to do fame. From a defensive back standpoint, D'Angelo Pons will be a part of that. Lewis Moore will be a part of that. Again, it is a ridiculous amount of Indiana Hoosiers. And my guess is, and again, how about this for a statement to say about Indiana football and something we never thought we would say before. There are so many players that are NFL worthy from the Indiana Hoosiers. I may have overlooked one or two of them. I think I got all the guys that were participating in the Combine, but frankly, I could be wrong. That's how good this Indiana football program has become, that I might have overlooked somebody. In terms of other, and Kevin mentioned the fact there's a bunch of guys from Notre Dame. They're going to be a part of it. In terms of guys that have local ties, I am asked by a fellow media member in town to be like his second set of eyes to find the Indiana high school guys that are participating in the Combine. And so I gave it a once-over earlier this afternoon. The three that I came up with would be Caden Curry of Center Grove and Ohio State, Donovan McCulley, obviously of Lawrence North, then Indiana, and then Michigan, and then Dylan Thieneman, Westfield, Purdue, and then Oregon for this last year. That'll all be going through the Combine a couple of weeks from now. Now, does it make me want to go watch a bunch of drills to see how the Indiana guys are? No, that's not my thing. But at the same time, frankly, it becomes much more of a story, in part because you've got that kind of fills the gap that normally talking about a playoff push for the Indiana Pacers would be talking about. But obviously, we're talking about this in reverse. And we talked about this early in the program, not as much, say, in the last hour and a half. But the Pacers, after winning last night, which in any other circumstance at Madison Square Garden is a wonderful thing, you can question it given where the Pacers are and trying to make sure they end up with a top 4 pick in the NBA draft coming up this year. They're going to try to rectify that by playing as few players as actually they possibly can tonight. 8 players officially listed as out. Obviously, Toppin, Halliburton, Furphy are long-term injuries. Other guys who will be resting injuries tonight, a.k.a. load management on a back-to-back. That would be Pascal Siakam, Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nemhard, T.J. McConnell. All of those players out this evening. Questionable, the last time I checked, is what Micah Potter was listed as, was what Jarris Walker has been listed as, and looking to see if there's any further update to those guys. And the answer is no. So still listed as questionable. It is possible the Pacers trot out 7 players for tonight's game against the Knicks. 7. Or the Nets, sorry. Right city, wrong team. And the Nets, obviously, in a very similar boat to the Indiana Pacers, doing their best to not win basketball games to improve their draft lottery status. Doesn't exactly sound like the greatest endorsement as to you should tune in. However, catch the broadcast. Pat Boyle will be fantastic, as will Mark Boyle, as will Eddie Gill. 7 o'clock pregame coverage, tip-off time just after 7:30 at the Barclays Center, if it's still called that. Pacers at Nets this evening. Last game before the All-Star break for an 8-day break, and the Pacers come back with the Wizards in the exact same boat as both the Pacers and Nets when they come back from said All-Star break. The other thing that I wanted to get to before we get to our next timeout and have our final guest of the show, because, again, we touched on this briefly when Kevin Bowen joined the program at 4 o'clock. I said, all right, we can talk about the Combine. There's obviously no first-round pick for the Indianapolis Colts. So the Combine is the next thing. Free agency is the next thing after that. But if you wanted to wedge something in between, it would be not just going after your own, i.e., trying to line up a contract with Alec Pierce, figuring out exactly what sort of contract you're going to give Daniel Jones. But then it's also, hey, what veterans do you jettison trying to save money? And so just so you have an idea about cap savings if you were to let go players, here's what it'd be from a Colts standpoint. You would save $24 million under the cap if you release Michael Pittman Jr. Again, very well-liked guy, both by fans and the locker room. I think everybody understands that business. The other names that have been mentioned, Zaire Franklin, you would save about $6 million. But I'm not sure you're going to find as productive of a player for your savings as Zaire Franklin. If it's Kenny Moore, you save about $7 million. And you could kind of say something similar there. So that's why it's possible that those two guys get brought up in terms of potential cap savings for this team. But it's not the obvious one that, unfortunately, the way that Pitt's contract is structured. And even he has said, hey, listen, I get it. I'm not sure what my status is going to be. That's a no-brainer to save that level of money. And it's crazy to think about this in NFL dollars, that's saving $6 million respectively on Kenny, or $7 million on Kenny, 6-ish on Zaire. It's a little kind of a drop in the bucket when you're approaching $300 million from a salary cap standpoint in the National Football League. We'll take this quick timeout. When we come back, bring it to college basketball to wrap up the show. A young man that I have known him since his days as a freshman at Carmel. And the things he did at Carmel, frankly, he's now doing in the Mid-American Conference for a team that is unbeaten. Pete Suter joins us next. It's The Ride without JMV. Greg Rakestraw filling in. We'll wrap it up next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
Joey, have you ever been in a Turkish prison?
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Now, normally, talk show host treat the last segment of the show as kind of the catch-all segment. This is everything that we missed in the program today. Not me. We got one more great guest. And this time, when we have a conversation when I'm wearing headsets, I can actually hear him. Because a couple of weeks ago, he and his wonderful mother stopped by to say hello during a broadcast. I could turn and shake his hand while I was still talking on the air. This time I'm talking on the air to him. It's Pete Suter of Carmel and now of the 24-0 Miami Redhawks who joins us now. Buddy, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. What is all of this attention like for you and your teammates? Because people are kind of catching on to your guys' story at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously super cool and it's super fun to put on for Miami, the university, and the program. But it can get overwhelming at times, I'm sure. But it's super cool.
Nobody goes into a season, maybe you did at the high school level, but usually in college, you don't think about going undefeated, for a particular period of time. What is it like having that and O next to your name as we're in the middle of February?
Yeah, I mean, you can't complain. I mean, going into a season and you have expectations of obviously winning a bunch of games and winning your conference championship, but no one really expected us to be this successful. So you just got to enjoy the process and keep moving on.
4 years removed from Carmel, first 2 years at Bellarmine, last 2 years now at Miami. Why was making that move from Louisville to Oxford, Ohio, the right move for you?
Yeah, I think it just felt like a good fit when I came on my visit here. I mean, I loved my 2 years at Bellarmine, had a great time there, but when I came and visited Miami and this campus, this community, the coaching staff was great. I met some of the players. It just felt like the perfect fit for me.
It is a coaching staff that obviously you know, but frankly, because they're all from here, I know them too. So to give folks an example, Travis Steele, Danville, Jonathan Holmes, Bloomington South, Christian Smith, Pike, Ben Botts, Muncie Central, Elijah Pennington, also Pike. How much Indiana high school hoop do you guys talk about around the locker room and the office on a regular basis?
I mean, it's weekly. I mean, depending on the matchups, I know Carmel just played Pike at Carmel. We made a little side bet, and it's whoever loses the game's got to take them out to lunch, and then got to wear either a Pike jersey or Carmel jersey on the next practice on Monday. So we talk about it. We keep up with our teams. I mean, Justin Kirby with Fishers, obviously the same deal. So, like I said, Indiana basketball is the best.
So, and unfortunately, you're 0 for 2 on those bets so far, huh?
I am 0 for 2, but the thing about the Greyhounds is they keep getting better, so they'll be better in March.
You got to have somebody that has a Lawrence North tie on your team. You would have won that bet as all of the highlighted games. Millett Hall has been there for a long time. It was packed in the old days. It has not been packed until recently. What is it like to see that place full again?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously being at a mid-major. I mean, even some games this year, there was probably only 100 to 200 people, including players and staff. So, I mean, it's obviously super cool that the students are starting to get involved, the community's starting to get involved, and that's the main goal. And that's, like I said in many other talks, that's the missing piece to the puzzle that we need to keep being successful.
All right. You guys can only kind of control what you can, which is go out and play in every night, and you can't control your schedule. But now you guys are kind of the subject of sports talk radio. You're unbeaten, but again, non-conference schedule. You didn't see any of the Big Ten ACC powers. How do you guys respond when you get questions about things like that, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously out there. Our strength of schedule. That's probably the biggest knock on us, being 24-0. But like you said, I mean, we can't control it. We just got to control the controllables and keep getting better every single day and keep improving, and then we'll maybe see one of those teams later in March, and that'll be our shot.
You get asked about this, so it kind of makes you think about it. But when the conference tournament rolls around 3 weeks from now, do you go into that kind of like last year knowing, hey, we got to win 3 straight games. We got to win that last game to make sure we're an NCAA tournament team? Or, again, are you to that point yet, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, you can't settle for short trying to get like an at-large bid or anything like that. You got to go in. I mean, it's tough to win 3 games in 3 days, especially with the competition in this conference. It's very elite. So, I mean, it's going to be tough, but I think we got the personnel to do it. And That's our goal at the end of the day, is to win the MAC championship.
Again, Pete Suter is our guest. Greg Rakestraw filling in for JMV here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. How much do you keep in touch with Coach Osborne these days?
Pretty frequently, actually. I over Christmas break, I went home the little time we get. I went to go watch the Greyhound practice, meet all the coaching staff again, the new coaches that are on. So we text back and forth pretty much weekly. So he's definitely still involved in all this process.
I was going to say, you do happen to have a guy that's on the staff that, only played 10 years in the NBA. Are you starting to kind of chat up Coach McRoberts a little bit about, hey, what life is going to look like after this season?
Yeah, I mean, we don't talk about it too much, to be honest, but I mean, it's definitely going to come up soon, especially once the season's going to be over. But like I said, my main focus right now, the whole team's main focus, everybody's main focus is keep winning ball games. Keep it simple as that. Academically, how are things going for you? They're going great. I mean, I can't complain. The university is obviously very high academically, and the teachers, they understand the mission as well. Well, again, my guess would be is you want to keep playing this game and be paid to play this game. Whenever you are done with that, what does the future hold for you? What is the degree in, and what are you hoping to do with it? Yeah, so I've gone back and forth. My degree is sports management and leadership, and then I'm also minoring in business because I was majoring in business over at Bellarmine University. So I've been back and forth with trying to get in to some businesses. I've done some shadowing with some insurance companies, but then I also it's tough for me to get away from basketball. I feel like coaching, once I got to hang up the shoes, I feel like coaching's gonna draw my attention. You got a few friends in that industry, buddy. I think that might be the way to go for you. Again, I know you want to keep playing as long as possible. Yep. When you have guys that again, this is your second year, so you've kind of at least been through this before. But I think the concept of rivalry may be more for us old timers and not so much for the guys on the floor. I've heard this game against Ohio is a pretty important deal. It's important to you because it's the next one. But from a rivalry standpoint, does this one feel different coming up on Friday night? Definitely. I mean, we're super excited. I mean, there's definitely been a rivalry over the years. The Battle of the Bricks, I think, is what they call it. But we're super excited for this university to show out on Friday, and hopefully we'll put on a show for them as well. You're also going to be on what we would call Big ESPN, the level of importance, not during the game, but leading up to it and afterwards for you guys to have. Again, you're one of the things that are being talked about in college hoops these days. You get a national stage on Friday night. Your thoughts on it? Yeah, I mean, you got to go out there like it's a normal game. You can't feel the pressure. You just got to, like I said, keep the main thing, and have complete trust in your guys and the coaching staff. And it's like another game, but you can't overlook how cool it is to be on national TV, especially at this level. You were kind enough to give me a Bellarmine hat when you ended up playing for the Knights. Is there some Miami swag that might be heading my way at some point in time in the near future? Definitely. I can definitely get you some Miami swag for sure. I hope you get to make it back for another Carmel game. I understand your schedule's going to be a little bit busy for the next few weeks. I hope our paths cross soon. I'm so happy for you, buddy. Give my best to Coach Holmes and keep getting those wins, all right? Yes, sir. Thank you. You got it. Pete Suter, kind enough to join us. And again, I loved watching him play and calling so many of his games at Carmel. I will share a story that was related to me by Coach Osborne that I've used it to talk about kind of the way that Pete got it as a younger kid. So Pete was a good enough athlete and a good enough player where he won a state championship as a freshman in 2019, and he was the only freshman that got playing time, as is normally the case at a place like Carmel, but with a group of seniors. And one of the things that Ryan Osborne said, he goes, this is one of the reasons you're going to like being around Pete Suter. He's like, he interacted with the seniors like he was one of their teammates, in which he was an important piece, but he also interacted with the kids in his own class. He never thought that, to use the Southern Indiana terminology, that he was, his britches were too big to hang out with the guys that would be his teammates for the next 3 years. So not surprising that sports management and leadership are things that he's focusing on from an academic standpoint. And it's funny, if you look at his stats this year at Miami, they look a lot like his career stats at Carmel. Averaging 14 points, 4.5 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, shooting 56% from three, or 56% from the field, 43% from three, and 73%
from the free throw line. The stats maybe don't overly wow you, but the end result sure does. So again, this year, that team is 24-0. Last year, that team went 25-9. In Pete's high school career, he lost one postseason game. The last one he played in. Who was the guy that got him? It was Braden Smith in Westfield. Things have worked out pretty well for Braden. Oh, that's the only postseason game that kid lost. In other words, there are some kids, and it helps when you got great talent around you. And Pete's second leading scorer at Miami, he is part of a good ensemble. But knowing him, I am 0% surprised that he's had a great run at Miami of Ohio. Rooting for him. 9 o'clock on ESPN. You want to check that out on Friday night. When I was a kid, this was the theme to like the start of like the wrestling show. So I think of this as like an opener. But you know it as the close. I am being swept off stage, the Apollo, as we speak. James, thank you. Always a pleasure. If you missed any of our great interviews, they're all available on the podcast page. Pete Suter, Zach Osterman, Josh Mullins, Nick Yeoman, Kevin Bowen, 1075thefan.com. I'm back tomorrow night at 6 for On the Horizon Weekly. Most importantly, John is back tomorrow at 3 on 93.5 and 1075 The Fan.